Okay, welcome. This is a July 2022 layout update on the Chili line. And I'm happy to say I've done some basic scenery and some more structure building on the FN3 portion of the layout. This section represents a freelanced area called Red River Junction. We start out here with Super Tree, and a adobe structure that was carved from balsa foam. The supports for the dock and the substructure is carved blue foam. What will be a general merchandise store is scratch built with doors from Banta. The next model in the background is a small balsa foam carved stone building, which will represent a garage. Next door is a stand-in model, which is a printed paper temporary model, which will be an old-time livery stable as well as a garage. And it'll have a gas pump and some other associated scenery details in front. We have a wagon that I built and detailed about 3 years ago. So we'll continue on up here as we move up towards the station area. Water tank is a Banta kit. The tool house and coal house is a scratch built kit made primarily from cereal box cardboard. The gap here you see will be filled with a old G-scale kit gondola that I'm making into a coaling platform. As we move back towards the station area, I've done some track laying, and there is a coal house and the station flat. Let's take a look at a few other projects I've been working on. Okay, first off, we will look at an old, very old, G-scale model of a gondola, a generic prototype, mostly DNR GW based. I purchased this kit probably in the mid-90s at a big train show when they were held at the Queen Mary. It was my first large-scale purchase, and basically sat in a box for the last 30 years until I decided that I want to use it. Of course, it is G-scale, and it is smaller than the other F-scale models that I normally work on. I do have the decking in place, as well as the rudimentary truss rods, queen posts, etc. That came with the kit, and that's all the detail I'm going to be doing on the underside of this kit. Next up, I'm working on a Hartford Products large-scale caboose. Show that to you in a second. I've completed the underframe, brake rigging, and have the floor and 4 walls put together. Here's the caboose. I've pre-painted the interior as well as all the walls. It's sitting on the Hartford trucks, and also a nice bridge model that I have to install at some point that I was able to pick up. But for right now, this is as far as I've gotten on this model. All right, we're going to switch over to my HON3 chili line. This is the town of Espanola with Otero Street in the background. And I want to point out the ramp that I built. This is from prototype photos. This ramp was used when the DNRG delivered automobiles to the local Ford dealership. They could unload them from flat cars, and the Ford dealership is just down the street. Here's a quick photo of the prototype. Since the scene in Espanola on this area is reversed, I did reverse it so the ramp is rolling down towards the main street versus facing the Bond and Knoll Company. The other little project I added to Espanola is the section house, tool house, kind of a unique design on this model. And I have a small picture here you can see with the large center door, the overhang on the roof, and the elevated platform that it sits on tapering into the right-of-way. Okay, let's look at where I've been working on in Santa Fe. I've completed the majority of the structures for the Santa Fe Y scene, and I'm moving on down what was then Jefferson Street, and we'll be crossing the Santa Fe River shortly. Here's a model of the Montoya house with the large tree that stood next to the house. This house stood along the Y. And there's a few pictures of it with the trackage, etc. Again, this particular section of the layout is reversed so that I could access the Y a little easier during operating sessions. So let's move on to the other side of the Y. Here's a close-up of the Montoya house. I added a number of details. This model is scratch built. The walls are balsa, but I added a lot of details with the front portal. You'll notice there are 3 different types of canales per a prototype photo I found of a different building, because no photos that I've ever found have been of this side of the house. The side that faces the tracks documented, but I haven't found anything on this side. But I did add a chair, table, some potted plants, flowers, etc. The windows actually have window screens in the far building, and fencing, etc., as it faces the old station and what is being used as an ice house. Okay, so we move back towards the backdrop. Streets here represented are Colorado Street, and we move on towards what will be West San Francisco Street, which has the Assembly of God Church and the residential structure at 406 West San Francisco Street. The brick structure is still standing today. The Assembly of God Church is long removed when they widened Guadalupe. And here is a picture of the Assembly of God Church with the brick house standing next to it. I didn't put as much detail into the brick house in the background, simply because it is about 3.5 feet away from the edge of the layout. And we move on up here. I'm working on in the buildings in the backdrop first, towards the backdrop, I should say. These structures are based upon photos in Dorman and I'll insert a couple of those, as well as the Sanborn maps and the Rio Grande valuation maps that I use. So it's as close really as I could probably get it. So I've just completed some of the buildings for that, and I'm going to be working on moving on up towards the Santuario here off of Jefferson. This will be the Santa Fe River crossing, which is well known, and you can see it in this photo here. I had removed the old white beadboard that was supporting Water Street and San Francisco Street, replaced it with green foam that I was able to find, same width as a blue or a pink. And I have some stand-in buildings here. This building, the white building, brick, will be the Santa Fe Electric Laundry, and I'll be kit bashing that with the brick walls and large windows, etc., with a parking lot next to it. I have a great photo of the delivery vehicles that they use, so I'm going to try to incorporate as many of those as I can. This building was right along the Chile line as it was going up Jefferson Street. Okay, next up, I've made some progress on my area model of the Santuario. The building to the right of the Santuario, the large one with the roof, is another mock-up that shows up in a couple photos, and I'll insert those here so you can see those. Took a while to understand exactly what how that structure was built. I did find online the structure is still standing in Santa Fe, so I could see that from the Google Maps, and the little accessory building. Unfortunately, I don't have room for the concrete power plant that stood behind the Santuario, and I'm just going to go with these three particular buildings. The backdrop will be worked on here. I'm going to have a row of trees, etc. According to every photo I found, there was mostly brush and trees, etc., between the Santuario and the Santa Fe River. The actual bed of the river needs to be elevated, probably to where the bottom of the spline road bed is, because contemporary photos show that just to be basically a meandering creek with the sides of the creek not as steep as I have put them here just to start. Anyway. I mentioned in the video that I work from maps, Sanborn maps. Here's a copy of one from 1930, and basically shows the area that I'm working on currently. This end of the top of the map here is from Rosario Street, and you can see the Chile line that makes its way down Johnson Street. From the top of the map until I get to San Francisco Street, which is this point here in the middle of the screen, San Francisco Street to the Y really didn't have room to model, so I picked it up with some of the buildings to the what would be the east side, the west side of the Chile line, to the left in this photo, and then work my way down with the buildings along San Francisco Street and Water Street. So here you can see the brick resident with the distinctive round tower in the front. Next to it was the Assembly of God Church, which had the 45-degree angle in the right side, the entryway, and that is, you can find that in several photos. Santa Fe Electric Laundry I alluded to. I have two photos of this particular building. One was early on when it was basically just half as large as it's showing in this 1930 map, brick. Later, towards the end of the Chile line, it was expanded and painted vivid white. So that should make something to a lot of interest as I complete that model. Looking forward to that. The Chile line then makes its way on towards the Santa Fe River crossing, which is here in the lower left-hand side. One more quick video here on the maps that I've been using to build the Chile line. This is a Denver and Rio Grande valuation map I purchased from the Colorado Railroad Museum several years ago, but shows a lot of detail. As you see, the Y as it moves on down towards Jefferson Street. And then where I'm modeling, we'll pick it up between San Francisco Street and Water Street. That's the section I was just showing earlier on this video. The bridge across the Santa Fe River, the Santuario, and moves on towards the Santa Fe Rail Yard. Denver, Rio Grande, New Mexico Central, and the AT&SF. Lots of detail. If you can get a hold of one of these maps, if you're interested in the Chile line, I highly recommend it. For more information on the Chile line, join us over on Groups.io, Santa Fe Branch Chile Line Group. A lot of great information there. Maps, photos, a lot of information from some very knowledgeable folks. So I want to thank them for their contribution. Well, until the next update, coming up probably early fall, I will leave you with a few views of the Santa Fe Y area circa the late 30s. Thanks so much for watching the videos. Hope you enjoy them, and we'll see you on the Chile line.